What is going on? Welcome into the Fin Addicts Miami Dolphins podcast on the Fin Addicts Network. As always, I am your host, Jimmy Kearns, joined as always with Brian and Savak. We'll get to them in a second, though. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe, follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Leave us a review. Please do the same with our other podcasts, The Deep Dive with Jason Sarney and Seriously Sports with Savak. Find our YouTube channel at Fin Addicts Network. Follow us on Twitter at Fin_Addicts. And please keep hitting us up on that hotline. You guys have been great so far. We listen to everything. We get as much as we can on the air. We really appreciate all the love we're getting on the hotline. That number is 786-309-7558. Call or text your reaction to Miami Dolphins news, weighing in our takes, suggestions, or if you have a dad joke of the day for Brian, please leave it there. But do know your text voicemails will be used against you on our media outlets. So what's going on today, fellas? Savak, you dancing over there, bro?
Oh, just feeling it, man. Feeling the juice and the lightning.
Feeling good? Yeah. Were you hitting that tequila again? Is that what it was?
No. I swore I never would again.
That usually doesn't last, but I see you learned your lesson, huh?
Yes, sir.
Good man. That's what I like. Brian, what's going on, brother?
First of all, Savak will be singing that same song in 3 months. We know how tequila works.
Yeah,
I'm doing really good.
When the Dolphins drop a game to the Bills 27-0, he'll be.
Don't do that, man. I'm doing really good. I'm excited to be here. We have a really special guest. I completely dropped the ball. I did not do a poll, so.
Oh my God, bro! What do you do here outside of almost everything?
I'm definitely overpaid. And I don't have to talk about the Fantasy Football Network anymore. We just filled their 5th league, so that's awesome. Done. And I loved how you just gave so much love about the hotline because it completely failed us this week. And after a few weeks of being super active, it fell off. So get on the hotline, people.
Well, that shows who actually listens to the hotline calls because it's not me. So again, Brian does everything around here, but apparently not the polls. As Brian mentioned, we have a great guest today. We have Lindsey Ok joining us. Lindsey, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
We're great. I'm glad you're here. It's very nice to meet you.
You too.
Or I guess this is meeting people in 2020.
Yeah.
This is considered a meet. So what do you got going on right now? What are you working on? Where can our listeners find you? What do you got going?
Like you said, 2020 is hard for everybody in sports. But I've been kind of doing my own thing for a while. I have my own site and I write there, and then I'm on podcasts and things like that. But yeah, it's going well. And yeah.
Awesome.
Where can we find that site?
LindseyOK.com.
Simple. That's good. That's good branding right there. You get it. That's perfect.
Yep, everything's the same.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it when it works out that way. A little interesting thing about you. You are a retired ballerina. Is that correct?
It is.
So I've never met a ballerina before. That's very interesting to me. I know it's an extremely difficult thing to do. I know I could not do it. And I know
Not with that attitude, you can't.
I know I'd look damn good in one of those gis. I think that's karate. I don't know. Leotards and a tutu, or yeah, right?
Yeah.
So they always say that offensive linemen and skill position players said they make great dancers because of the footwork. There's some crossover with dancing and football. But where's the crossover with dancing and NFL reporting? How did you go from a ballerina to an NFL reporter?
So my mom was a dance teacher. So I grew up in a dance studio, since I was 2 years old. I wasn't even old enough to be in classes yet, but because my mom was a teacher, obviously I got the hookup and got able to get in. So I did that pretty much my entire life. And then I don't know if it was just because my interests change. Obviously, when you become a teenager, you're not interested in that stuff anymore.
Yep.
And I don't know. The way I fell into football was I interned for Ed Reed, actually. And I did his foundation work. I did a whole bunch of stuff for him. And I kind of networked my way up, met a whole bunch of people. And then just that's kind of how I fell into it. I didn't want to be a writer at all. I hated English class. I hated writing papers. I hated all of that. So it was never really something that I saw myself being. It just kind of fell into my lap.
What was there any kind of, because I know this is the case sometimes, especially with children, if you go, ballerina dancing, and it doesn't have to be just women or just young girls, obviously. It doesn't have to. I know it's we got another guest joining us. We got your dog over there trying to chime in. Right, your dog's had a take. What kind of dog do you have?
I have a Pomeranian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's 13 years old, so he knows what's going on, but he runs the show basically.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Everyone who has a dog will say the same thing. My dog's just lazy and sleeps right next to me during all this. So, was there anything to you go as a dancer, as a young girl, to an extreme? Was it hey, I don't want to be known? It is a girly thing to do ballet dancing. It doesn't have to be. Boys can do it. That's great. That's fine. Nothing wrong there. But did you want to go from one extreme to the other? Was it all right, I tackled this and I accomplished this. Now let me go prove myself in this, more physical world, something. They're kind of opposites, but they're kind of not. Was there any of that to it?
Not really. I would like to be like the Troy Bolton and be does anybody get that High School Musical reference or no?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I was hoping one of you said yes. I was like,
so where you can kind of do both, but I don't know if I could do it now. Still, I could, but unfortunately, my knees are horrible, and I can't do the splits anymore. I just can't do it anymore. So I've taken up yoga and stuff like that, where it's kind of similar. But without the technique aspect, I guess, if that makes sense. But it was never about proving myself. Again, like I said, it was just something that kind of happened.
Okay.
And if I could do them both now, I would, but I can't.
Yeah. I hear that a lot with knees and ankles and stuff going at a pretty young age when you're from that world. And I didn't mean proving yourself to anybody, because you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. I meant more so proving yourself to you.
Oh, sure.
Accomplish. You seem like you're a go-getter, and you go out. If you want to accomplish something, you do it, from what I've read about you and seen. So anybody else got anything for Lindsey? Any questions on that? You guys want to talk High School Musical for a little bit?
How long have you been watching High School Musical? No, how long did you work with Ed Reed on the Ed Reed Foundation?
So I worked with him, I guess it was the summer before they won the Super Bowl, or before he won the Super Bowl. And then after that summer, I wasn't his intern anymore, but I still, I ran camps with him. I did fitness days with him and stuff like that. So, I mean, a long time, I guess, just off and on.
Did you try to get did you get a Super Bowl ring? Did you try to? No, I would have tried to working him for a ring.
But it was cool to see, something, and not to toot my own horn here, but
toot it, girl. If you got to, toot it. Do your thing.
Something that I think is unique about me is I've seen the NFL from a fan's perspective. I've seen the NFL from a player's perspective, from the foundation, from the behind the scenes, and then as a member of the media. So I've kind of seen it all. And I don't know, I'm not going to give you some lazy take about how Antonio Brown should be on the Ravens. I'm not going to say that. I don't think he should, because I don't think the players are going to react that way.
Wait, that's a lazy take, because I was going to bring that up later, that I think Brown is the best fit in the Ravens. But all right, maybe I'll shelf that one, because you've been around the game in multiple different ways. You have a lot of perspective. That's a great way to build it. See it from multiple angles. I attack everything in life from perspective, because you don't know. You don't know something until you've seen it from every angle, So, Savak, did you have a question? Anything?
Just gonna ask: is it safe to assume then that you are a Ravens fan, if you had to pick a team?
Yeah, I mean, I started before I was even writing for the team, covering the team, whatever. I started as a Ravens fan. But Howard.
Your dog's name is Howard. That is fantastic.
His name's Howie, but he's Howard when he gets in trouble right now.
I like dogs with human names. That's always my favorite.
His full name's Howard Phillip Miles. So
he's got 3 names.
But yeah, now I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
We were talking about if you were a Baltimore Raven fan or if
Oh.
you had to pick a team, would it be the Ravens?
Yeah. I mean, I would. I obviously root for them out of any other team, but since like being in this industry, you kind of like, I find myself rooting more for like players rather than like a team. Like, for example, like when the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, like I love Cam Newton. He's like one of my favorite players. And like, I was just rooting for him to win, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So before we go further, Jimmy, I have to ask her a follow-up question when she spoke about players. So can you please explain to us and the listeners this feud you have with Matt Ryan and how this started and what is your, I guess, affinity for hating Matt Ryan?
The thing is, I don't actually hate him. It kind of started like because him and Joe Flacco were drafted the same year. And I always felt, and I still feel like this, by the way, that Joe Flacco did a lot more with a lot less. And Matt Ryan he had Tony G, he had Julio Jones, he had like this whole core of guys, and he still couldn't win anything. And yet he seems to get so much more respect than Joe Flacco. So it kind of started like that to me. And then ever since then, anytime I can throw a Matt Ryan dig in about anything, I will do it. But I don't actually hate him. I actually not like him. Don't get that out there. But I don't want to start that rumor. But it's kind of like a mutual kind of understanding. Like, I'm gonna jab you every once in a while, but I don't hate you. Like, I sent him a gift when his kids were born. Like, I'm not going to actively root for the guy, but I'm going to make fun of how he's sunburnt all year long.
All right. Well, you guys all set with that? You guys want to keep it moving or what? All right. So we'll get into a little NFL news here. We had the NFL Top 100 came out for the year, and we have Lindsey's very own Lamar Jackson, number 1 player in the NFL. If you're asking at home, where is Patrick Mahomes? He is number 4 on the list. So we talked about it a little bit. I had to look into it a little bit on my own. I got a buddy who's a big Chiefs fan, so he was screaming about this. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong here, please. The voting was done around Thanksgiving. Around that time, Mahomes was injured, and Lamar Jackson looked like he was the future of the NFL at that point in the season. So that's kind of what happened here, right? I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson's not worthy of number 1 on this list for sure. The dude is elite. But I mean, I think if you take it right now at this day, I think Mahomes ends up as number 1, correct?
So yeah, Jimmy, I'm not too sure when the voting actually takes place. You got to assume it's going to be at the end of the season. There's a lot of slack for this list because the players don't take it too seriously. Many have publicly said that. But then the same players also go on Twitter and get so up in arms and start like fights with everybody. So they got to take it somewhat seriously. So there's just a lot of unknown about who's actually voting, when they're voting. A lot of different people have different thoughts on that.
Well, this list in particular is voted on by the players, correct? Oh, so not this one?
It should be.
They
claim it to be.
Lindsey, you seem to know. So I always was under the assumption this was a player's vote when they do this every year. Isn't that what it's pitched as? What is it really, Lindsey?
That is what it's pitched as.
I mean, that's what they tell you. It's just the players do not take it seriously at all. Like I've seen players give it to their PR people to fill out. Like, it doesn't. Like, I don't put a lot of weight on like the players voted or their peers voted.
Oh, okay. See, I'm thinking the guys are sitting at home. They know everybody. So that's the good insight you have. I'm coming from the fan angle. I'm getting dupes. Man, I don't know how to feel about this anymore, man.
You're in trouble, but
I do think your point is super valid though, because you got to remember that time of last year around December. Mahomes was on the shelf and Lamar Jackson was terrorizing the NFL. They made him out to be a superhero at the end of the regular season, and he got, we remember the full spectrum of things of Mahomes coming in the playoffs and just destroying. But in December,
yeah,
this wouldn't look too crazy.
No, it was Lamar in December. And yeah, I think it was week 8 and 9 when I looked it up that Mahomes was out. And then 2 of the 3 games when he came back from that injury, he had under 200 passing yards and like under 2 touchdowns. One was an insane game, but going into like early December, he was like, he was all right. And yeah, no, Jackson was head and shoulders the best player in the NFL. And I don't have much. I'm glad with Russell Wilson's number 2. I will always scream about this dude. He is so underrated in my mind. Like, what more do you want this guy to do? He hasn't missed a game. Career completion percentage around like 69%, I believe I saw it was. I mean, this dude just does it all. Savak, what did you think of the top of this list here?
The way I kind of looked at it, I think that if we were just talking quarterbacks, then obviously Mahomes is going to be light years ahead of Lamar. And this is also coming from, I'm a big fan of Lamar. Honestly, I wanted Miami to take him in that draft, but I'm kind of glad they didn't because Adam Gase would have completely wrecked his career right out the gate. But, I mean, and we as Miami fans should know better than anybody that Lamar started last season on fire. He came out against us and completely destroyed us. And so I can kind of see where or why he would end up at number 1 versus, some of these other guys, Mahomes, Wilson. But I agree with you, Jimmy. I'm glad Wilson made it number 2 because it's true. What more does this man have to prove?
Yeah, there's really nothing left for him to prove now, man. He's done it all. I'm also happy to not see Aaron Rodgers in the top 10 anywhere. That makes me happy. There's really nothing too egregious to me in the top 10 here. I know Brian might disagree with me on Michael Thomas being the highest wide receiver on there at number 5. But
who would you put as the highest wide receiver if it were up to you?
Me?
Yeah.
Michael Thomas, man. Michael Thomas. I know. So everyone came out, the Madden rating, everyone was fired up about that. How's he a 99 in Madden? Like, we're talking football. We're not talking about your fantasy football team. We're not talking about Madden. We're talking about we need 10 yards, and there's another grown man on the opposite side of you trying to stop you. This dude gets it every time. I don't care that his receiving, average yardage is, 9 yards or 10 yards, whatever. This dude catches everything thrown his way. He doesn't need to take the top off. They always have a guy for that. That's why I think, but DeAndre Hopkins is a savage. Julio's a savage. Tyreek Hill's a savage. I just prefer Michael Thomas and his build. Like, I'm a Thomas Hopkins kind of guy or a Julio kind of guy as opposed to like Tyreek. Like, I like a big, tall wingspan kind of guy at wide receiver, So that's just me. But I'll never sit here and argue with anybody if they're like, hey, Tyreek's the best or, Hopkins is the best. Like, we are spoiled with the amount of wide receivers that we have in the NFL right now. There's just studs on every team. So, but yeah, that's me. And I don't know. Christian McCaffrey, highest running back. That makes sense. Derrick Henry, 10, maybe whatever. Stephen Gilmore got in there. That dude's awesome. So it's nothing too crazy to me. Anybody else got anything?
Well, Lindsey, we haven't asked Lindsey what she thinks about Lamar being number 1. What is your take on that?
Oh, yeah. My apologies.
I can't put Lamar over Mahomes. I just can't.
Ooh.
I mean, I get I didn't realize that they had decided this list, however they wanted to vote it, like around Thanksgiving. But I think personally that if Mahomes hadn't gotten injured, he would have given Lamar a run for his money for MVP. Mahomes is so much better than Lamar is. I hate to say it, but he just is and especially in the postseason. I'm sorry, you cannot be the number 1 player in the NFL if you cannot win in the postseason. And I mean, Ravens fans get so mad when people say Lamar can't win a playoff game, but it's the truth. He can't. You cannot win a playoff game until you're dubbed. You cannot win a playoff game until you win one.
I mean, Peyton Manning had to deal with that for 6 years.
Sure.
It's definitely a valid point. I think though Mahomes was not the best player in the NFL last regular season. He concreted this position in the playoffs, 3 comeback wins. So if the votes were done before the playoffs, this all makes sense. The other thing that you gotta, Lamar Jackson was among the top passing statistics last year, Then you throw in the fact that he's a 1,000-yard. He was like the third highest rusher in the NFL. I think that adds a lot to it. But I mean, I just think if, like at the end of the day, we just look at the story of the NFL is the playoffs and the Super Bowl. But if we just looked at the regular season, he was a complete cheat code. The rest of it, I think, is pretty solid. I like to joke about Michael Thomas just because he was in a beef with Devontae Parker. But he's number one. Him and DeAndre Hopkins, I think Hopkins has had a far less to play with in his time. So, but whatever, they're interchangeable. I think the list is good if you just swap Mahomes and Jackson. But it makes sense. These lists are so, honestly, I think all these lists are,
they're just made
ridiculous.
To argue about.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's
just
something
like
to talk about
MJ
during the
LeBron
offseason.
Stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's always something. These pundits got to keep talking about something. And, yeah, these back and forth arguments are the best way to do it.
If it's not a Chris Sims list, I just, let it go, and I don't care about it whatsoever. If Chris Sims put out a list, I'm going to, boycott his paper and protest outside of his building.
So I'm starting to wonder if you just say things, if you troll me sometimes, Brian, even off of social media, in our just day-to-day life, you troll me because we argued over a text message months ago where you told me Julio was the best receiver in the NFL and you were starting a team, it'd be Julio. Now you don't even mention the dude. You just know how to push my buttons.
It's always Hopkins.
All right. Well, I got to go back through some texts after the show here. And,
Julio was in the mix, though.
All right. Well, on that, we'll keep it moving here. I'm about to dig into my phone, too, as soon as someone starts talking for a little while. Antonio Brown has been suspended 8 games, according to NFL.com. This stems from his no contest plea to burglary. I can never say that word well. Burglary and battery charges from a January incident. He burglarized him. Burgled. Yeah, burgled is better. I can say that easier. January incident in Florida. It always happens in Florida. That place is off the charts down there. Savak knows. So, yeah, Antonio Brown is suspended. Not surprising news there. What we do want to get into a little bit, and my lazy take of where he lands this year, if he lands anywhere at all soon, I'm sure he's going to. Lindsey, I know where you think he's not going to go. Do you have an opinion on where, not even where you think he goes, maybe where he fits best? You got any opinion on this?
I don't know. Honestly, I feel like the guy is such a headache. And I mean, we all know how it goes in the NFL. If you can be a headache, but if you're a good player, somebody's going to sign you anyway. So therefore, I think potentially he will get picked up somewhere. My big question is after, because he's suspended half the season, will we even make it half the season? That's my question. So teams might not want to take that chance because they don't know. But going off the Ravens thing, everybody wants him to go to the Ravens. I don't see it at all. And the reason it is because of his past, his domestic issues. The Ravens have said numerous times that they have a 0 tolerance policy for that stuff after Ray Rice. And it's one thing if you had Ray Rice and you cut him and everything, they did all that, but the way they handled it afterwards, it's going to be so much of a headache for them that I just do not see it happening whatsoever. I don't see them dealing with it at all. They wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
So I have to take issue with her saying it is a lazy take because it's not too lazy. Lamar Jackson came out last week and begged for them to sign him. It also makes sense due to they have Hollywood Brown, his cousin, as an up-and-coming wide receiver, but they don't really have a star wide receiver to take some of the pressure off of Lamar, and maybe he gets to that next plateau in the playoffs. You're right about the domestic violence. They can't afford any headache on that. So that makes sense. But I think every other aspect of it, he makes perfect sense in Baltimore. I just think, too, something that is kind of going to hinder him getting signed is everybody's in kind of a mental health pressure cooker with all of the COVID stuff and the extra pressure that's putting on there. Maybe if somebody takes a chance on him, they don't even bring him in until maybe the last few days of preseason because they just don't want that distraction when things are already so stressful and tenuous.
So yeah, I mean, but then if you're like, then you're already admitting that this dude shouldn't be around. You know what I mean? So then you're kind of that. Yeah, you're admitting that he's a issue and holding him back a little bit. So the reason I'm kind of on the fence with this, the Ravens actually isn't even my favorite landing spot, and I agree with Lindsey on a lot of it, and then I still like the Ravens. Agree with Brian. It wouldn't be the first time that an NFL team has gone back on, taking a stand on domestic violence, and then, oh, here comes some talent. If Mahomes was, it's just talent. It's unfortunate how it is. Talent always wins out. It's just the way this league is. It's extremely unfortunate. They get away with practically anything. And if you're talented, you'll be back on a roster. That aside, though, the structure with Baltimore, I mean, they're very well run from the owner all the way down to the, towel boy. Like, Harbaugh, they'll keep him in line. Guys on that defense, they have veterans, keep him in line. But the reason it's not my favorite team for him to land is having a young quarterback. Like, I don't want this dude to come in and destroy my young quarterback. Can you imagine, if Lamar doesn't see him or something and Antonio comes over the bench and just gets into Lamar's face? Like, I don't even want that to be a possibility. So with that said, my favorite landing spot is the Seattle Seahawks. They took a shot on Josh Gordon. And you want to talk about an organization that has ran well, you can't find one much better than Seattle. Russell Wilson really has never had anyone like him. Metcalf looks good. Lockett's looked good. Baldwin was great, but nothing like this. So I really like Seattle. And I wrote down the Bucks too, which I was really surprised, but I've seen a lot of people talking about the Bucks. And that would just be insane. That would just be fun to watch. Savak, what, you got an opinion on this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting to think that AB really should stand for Atom Bomb, because he shines so brightly and then just detonates and destroys everything around him, which is what makes finding a home for him so difficult. But from a football perspective, as much as I'd love to see him share a field with his cousin, because, that would just be a lot of fun, I picked 5 teams out that I think would be good fits. The first 3 are a bit more realistic. The latter 2, I think they could use his help on the field, but I don't think the coaching staffs are prepared to handle him. And those would be the Indianapolis Colts, I think would be a great place for him. They could really use him. They have a good coaching staff there, great structure. The Houston Texans, they just let DeAndre Hopkins go. They could use the superstar receiver. The Tennessee Titans could also use his services. And then, of course, the latter 2, I'd love to see him go to Arizona with the Cardinals, but for the same reason that you just said, young quarterback, and then you factor in new coach, it'd just be so up in the air. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury could handle him. And finally, the Green Bay Packers would love to give Aaron Rodgers a weapon. How many times does your superstar quarterback have to beat the table saying, get me some weapons before you finally get him some? But then can Matt LaFleur coach this guy,
Yeah, a lot of what you said is would definitely be interesting. I saw the Texans as well and read into that. And, Watson's a little further in his career that I think it's something he could deal with for sure. The Colts, man, him and Rivers just screaming at each other would be fun to watch. Rivers trying to limp wrist one down the field and underthrow him by 30 yards. That'd be beautiful to watch. The Colts are actually one of my favorite teams because I like to bet on them a lot. So I really hope that doesn't happen. And yeah, the Packers makes a ton of sense.
How is the Packers not like? How is that not done already? Like,
thank you.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. It's the perfect scenario. He's out in the middle of nowhere. He's got this star quarterback that will not let him dictate the huddle. It just makes so much sense. At this point, though, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the teams that were mentioned sign him tomorrow. But I also would not be surprised if this dude never plays in the NFL again. He's had multiple chances. He's burnt everything to the ground. I don't think anyone has any faith in his mental health. And it was also said, so it wasn't just the burglar in Florida. His suspension is stemmed to the events with his personal trainer and the allegations that were made there. So this is kind of like all grouped together. And they said, like, if your name goes in anywhere, Like if anything comes up, I don't care if you get a crossing, like a jaywalking ticket, whatever it is, like you're done for the rest of the year. So, he's on double secret probation. Maybe they just let it play out for like a couple weeks and see, he's never gone quiet a couple weeks. So like maybe they just drop the suspension and everybody's like, don't touch him for 2 weeks and see if he explodes. But I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if we never see Antonio Brown again. You have to have the perfect scenario, the perfect coaching situation, I think more importantly than anything, you have to be able to say, we're done. Bye. Like, I don't care if we're 12-4 about ready to go for home field advantage in the playoffs. Like if he acts up, you got to let him go.
See, that's the key. It's just like Lindsey touched on earlier. It has to be a team that can already succeed without him because he's not going to be there for the first half of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these franchises we named, it's definitely possible. I mean, these aren't, this isn't the Bengals or anything like that. We got some good teams listed here, so I would be surprised. I'd be shocked if we don't see him play football again. I don't agree with Brian on that. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see him this year. I wouldn't be shocked by that if teams kind of like, whatever, he's missing half of this messed up season anyways, let it slide for a bit, leave him sitting there. But I would argue, this was his second strike. I know you could probably look and claim it's a fifth. You can claim it's, his second, but I think he gets one more crack at it. He's just too talented. He's arguably the best wide receiver in the world when he's up and going well. But man, it's a huge risk. The dude's got some issues, man. I was going to say basket case, but I don't want to say that, something derogatory. The dude clearly has some mental health issues, and, hopefully he just gets well in his head and lives a good, full life. Moving on, some practice squad changes we'll touch on real quick. From 16 players down to 12, each team can protect 4 players from the practice squad every week, can activate to the roster 90 minutes before kickoffs. 6 players have no limitation on years in the league. Brian, real quick, we don't need to get into this too much. You're the go-to guy for this kind of stuff. What's all this mean here?
Just obviously with COVID, and I mean, we've seen how rapid this COVID list changes daily. Gardner Minshew's was on it for 2 days. Matt Stafford was falsely put on it. Just in the past, 48 hours, I think 4 Dolphins have gone on and off, and that's just one team. And it's just going to be what it's going to be like, this isn't going away. And as they're not hitting each other right now, they're just kind of socially distant working out on the same field. So when they start hitting, we're going to see a lot more of this movement on the COVID list. And that's why they had to bring this practice squad up. And they also had to protect some of the players so they can't be poached from other teams. So you can have that familiarity. There's a lot, there's a lot going on with that. A lot of teams are talking about, or Bruce Arians was talking about today, how he's going to segregate one of his quarterbacks away from everybody else, just in case, they get the 2 other go down and they have somebody, you can bring in an offensive lineman off the street. You can't bring in a new quarterback. So it's just that flexibility of the recognition that COVID list is going to be lighting up all year.
What is that addition here at the end? 6 players have no limitation on years in the league. What does that mean by that?
So it used to be you had to be, I believe, maybe Lindsey can correct me on this. I think you had to be in your first 3 years of your NFL career to be eligible to go on the practice squad. So with this, they're going to make 6 players. They don't have that. You can be on year 12. You could be on year 4, whatever.
Oh, okay. So 6 players per team. Interesting. Was there any? So they can activate a player up to 90 minutes before kickoff. Do you know what the limit was? There a limit before that, or was it couldn't have been 90 minutes, but what was it before that? Do you know? Because that's the interesting part. That's the interesting part to me, that if someone
at least 24 hours.
Oh, wow. So that's a big change.
I could be wrong there, but it's definitely, it wasn't that close.
Yeah. So that's a big change, because that's an interesting part to me that just kind of stuck out. If someone, tests positive or go 2 hours before a game, boom, you can get a practice squad guy in there right off the bat. That's interesting. Not a thrilling topic to dive into. I mean, Savak, you got anything to add on this? It's nothing too exciting, but it's good stuff to know. Everything's changing in the league this year.
Absolutely.
All right, you want to talk exciting? For the 40th time on the history of this podcast, we're going to be talking a third-string quarterback, Josh Rosen, baby. Chosen Rosen. We love talking about Josh Rosen over here. I love Josh Rosen. Apparently, someone loves Josh Rosen a little bit more than me. That's Lindsey. Big Rosen fan from what I was hearing.
I should have worn my shirt. Damn it.
You have a Rosen shirt?
Sure do. He sent it to me.
You and his mom probably, the only one with Rosen shirts. He sent it to you?
Yeah.
Oh, I might have to hear more about that. That's interesting. You were corresponding with Josh Rosen? I'm jealous. Hey, just a shoulder shrug.
Not
whatever.
just corresponding. Yeah. He was outfitting.
Send in gifts. Interesting. Hey, I wouldn't mind he sent me something. He's a good-looking dude.
We have to start there. So, Lindsey, where does this love affair with Josh Rosen start?
Okay, let's not start any rumors. There's no love affair or anything like that. I don't know. He's always been a guy that's not afraid to say what he thinks. And I feel like in the NFL, they try to tell you what to think and they try to tell you not to think what you think and not say it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I feel like as a young guy coming into the league, he wasn't afraid to say that. And that's really admirable. And now, like, looking back on it, when you see Joe Burrow saying these same things, you're like, why was Josh Rosen like frowned upon by saying that stuff and Joe Burrow saying the same stuff and he's being praised for it? It just shows you how much like society can change in just a couple of years. But anyway, I've always liked his attitude. And a lot of people want to say that he doesn't love the game enough or all this stuff. And it's like, it's not that he doesn't love the game enough. He just loves other things as well and is very open to talking about that stuff, and he's never going to shy away from it. And I really hate that he has that like stigma on him and that he's always going to somehow carry that on his back. Like he's never going to get rid of that. And I think it should be looked on as more of like an admirable characteristic instead of one that's looked down upon.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because we've talked about this before on the podcast, the three of us. So Rosen went to a good school, and from everything that I gathered, he seemed to be a pretty solid student at a good school. And I never took this as he didn't want to play football. I took it as he has other interests, other loves, other things in his life that he cares about. And my takeaway was that this dude, some of these guys, all they can do is play football. After football, they don't know what they're going to go and do. It seems like Rosen could literally almost go and be whatever he wanted to be. He has the intelligence. He has the background. Is that accurate? Like this dude can kind of go do whatever he wants, but people want to be like, oh, he's from money. He doesn't care. He'll just go home and sit on mommy and daddy's money. And I don't get that sense from him.
No, he actually graduated. He went back to school to graduate. So, I mean, that tells you everything right there. You know, it's like it's more of where these kids go to school and they're known as the football player. But he was more of like the student and a football player instead of just being known as a football player. I don't know. I like you said, he has the intelligence, he has the ability to speak up, and he has the ability to run a football team. Not many people can say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish he would have got more of a crack with Miami. I hope he gets a decent crack somewhere. I know me, Savak, and Brian, we've talked often that, you know, we think this dude has potential. Just got to find him a landing spot and some time. The dude hasn't had a legit shot yet. Right. So
I think that narrative that you talked about, it couldn't be more false. And I think Trent Dilfer was one of the people in the Elite 11 camp that kind of started this. They had a
Trent Dilfer.
when they first encountered each other, they didn't get along, but then they ended up, he completely changed his mind. And Trent Dilfer was like, I was wrong. Like I was just flat out wrong. And that was before the draft. And, you know, like in Arizona, his teammates had nothing but amazing things to say about him. And not just his teammates. Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald had nothing but great things to say about him. You know, the story's been covered so much, but when he was traded, he didn't just jump on a plane to Miami. He stayed in Arizona and played in a charity softball game. But the other thing, and what's proving his love for this game, and it's just a false narrative, but like, so for the second straight year, a team that has Josh Rosen drafts a quarterback in the top 10, right? So if he wasn't 100% all in, we'd be hearing about Josh Rosen whining, crying, leaving the team. No. So per report of Armando Salguero yesterday, Rosen has not asked for a trade. He has not asked for a release. He is willing to stay in camp with Miami despite pretty much, he has no chance. But despite that, he's going to stay there and work his ass off and try to earn a job. I think that alone should kill this narrative. But my fascination, though, with the love of Josh Rosen isn't any of this. But I really do think he's a great player. And I think around his second contract, he's going to be something. He just ran into two guys that, his ceiling is more like Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, where, guys like Kyler Murray and Tua, their ceiling is something we might not have ever seen before. So I think Josh Rosen will lead a successful career. Why Josh Rosen comes up on this podcast so often is it's really funny on Twitter amongst the Josh Rosen truthers, right? The people that just, even though we just went out and drafted Tua, think that somehow he's going to be Josh Rosen's going to be the starting quarterback. Despite signing Chan Gailey, Ryan Fitzpatrick, handpicked offensive coordinator, people still think that Rosen's going to start. So that's what I think is funny. And I wanted to ask Lindsey, do you see that? Are you realistic this year about Rosen's outlook?
So obviously, and the same thing kind of happened with Lamar Jackson. We're not going to see Rosen if Tua doesn't get hurt. Like, Tua's the guy there, but there's still potential for that to happen, not that I'm rooting for anybody to get hurt or anything like that. And again, this is such a crazy year. You don't know, he could get coronavirus and, Ryan Fitzpatrick could get coronavirus. Again, not saying I want them to get, you don't know these people on Twitter. They will say that I said that. That's not what I'm saying at all, but I'm just saying I feel like that's the only kind of sense that we would see him as the starter. That being said, can we talk like potential landing spots for him? Like, say he did get traded. I think he would do great in Pittsburgh. I think he would do great in Chicago. Those are my top two, and maybe the Bucs, maybe sit behind Brady for a year or two. I think that sense he would kind of really succeed there. And I would really hate to see him go to Pittsburgh because I hate the Steelers so much, but I just feel like that's such a good place for him. That's such a good organization, such a good coach, good offensive line, weapons. You sit behind a quarterback for a year or two. Big Ben's going to play 3 years tops.
Yeah, and, at the most.
I really think that instead of going through like the carousel of backup quarterbacks, if they just get him to sit and be that Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre, I feel like he would be set there.
Yeah, you really perked my ears there with the Bucs idea. I think that's something to it. Just to me, I haven't even thought about that. But yeah, if you can go sit a year or two behind Brady and the weapons they have, and they continue to build, the defense is good, and they're working on the run game, and they're going to keep getting better. Yeah, who knows? The reason I always talk about this dude and love this dude is because it was no risk, high reward, the trade getting him. I thought he was the best quarterback in that draft. Hey, time will tell. He still could be. I look pretty wrong right now. But I thought he was the best QB in that draft. And he hasn't gotten a shot. He just hasn't gotten – there's guys – you see a guy like Jamarcus Russell who they sent home with a blank DVD, and he came in the next day saying that he watched it and the film looked good. And they're like, yeah, there was nothing on it. You see guys like that had a shot and they blew it. And then you see a guy like Rosen who's been thrown into a couple horrible situations and hasn't gotten a fair shake. And I just want to see a good dude, good football player, good kid get a good shot. That's it from my angle. Savak, you got anything to add?
I will contend that originally during the draft, I didn't want him. I was ecstatic that Arizona traded ahead of us to take him. Oh my goodness, couldn't have worked out better. But then, after everything that he went through, and when you see that perceived value, just like you said, high upside, low risk move to bring him into Miami. And I think that he's pretty much shaken that I can't think of the word. I just blanked.
Stank?
Yeah, that that stigma on him.
Oh,
all
right,
he
same
doesn't
thing.
care about football, because after getting passed around like a duchy at a frat party, the man still wants to show up. He still wants to compete, and I can really respect that. And he's essentially become essential personnel in Miami now. because of all the uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. Just like Lindsey was alluding to, there is always a possibility something could happen. And I think that a lot of teams, if not all of them, are going to roll into the season with 3 quarterbacks, which makes him invaluable right now. And I'd really like to see him get a shot, because that Arizona, his first season in Arizona was a disaster piece, man. Like that wasn't even fair. And
so I appreciate the Dutchie drop there, and then the Slipknot song name thrown in at the end too. Give me a minute while I Urban Dictionary Dutchie and what it means, and then I'll get back to you guys. Anybody else, anything else for their love of Rosen here? And please, I want to reiterate, there is no love affair with Lindsey and Rosen. Lindsey has a way bigger following than we do. We do not want her catching some flack over that or something, so nothing going on. Dude sent out a t-shirt, and hey, she's a fan. And I am too. If you want, maybe there's a love affair with me and him. If you got Twitter, want to get that going, hashtag Kearns Rosen.
Hey, if he'd like to take me on a date, man, I'm down. Let's do this.
I would not say no.
Absolutely
I don't know.
Not.
QB1, bro.
I think this year is going to be the best thing that's happened to Josh Rosen. The poor guy's, before the NFL, he had 3 different offensive coordinators at UCLA. The pressure's been on this kid nonstop. So much negativity. I think sitting as the QB3 this year, and just a chance to learn how to read a defense in the NFL, get some familiarity, learn, like the one thing he lacks is what Fitzpatrick and Tua thrive at better than anyone, is that natural born leadership. Because I don't think that Josh Rosen has a love of football problem. I think he has a leadership problem. And I think, being around these 2 guys is going to be amazing. Getting the pressure off of him. We need to start looking this guy like what Miami gave up to get him, a very late 2nd round pick. You take that expectation off of him, nobody's building an offense for Josh Rosen like a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or a Tua. He needs to learn this stuff. He needs just the pressure off. I think sit for a year. And I think he's got a 2-year contract in Miami. I think at the end of that 2 years, the dude's going to be 25, and, he's younger than Joe Burrow right now. He's going to be 25 and ready to play and have the experience. I think it happens for him. The expectations need to drop.
I like that. You've been preaching for months now that this is the best, best thing that could have happened for him was this season and what he's doing. So you've had a lot of faith in him in this season and what's going on. And yeah, I think we all here hope that he can find a landing spot and at least get a shot, man. So, all right, let's keep it moving. We're running a little behind here because I've been getting a little fired up on a few topics and talking too much. So something to touch on quickly, though. Xavien Howard was added to the PUP list. Brian, not a big deal here, right? This happens, whatever. They're saying he's running at full speed still. He just hasn't done any football drills. No biggie, right?
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It should be this. They're just limiting the mileage he sees before, their Pro Bowl cornerback comes back. They really want to see him with Byron Jones. So why put him out there? He's a vet. He knows what he needs to do. Give him like 10 days before the season starts. Let's just hope that that's what it is. And it doesn't have anything to do with like a setback to he had a small procedure, but not a major procedure. So let's just hope the knee hasn't, gotten another setback, but I think it should be okay. I know Armando Salguero said today that it's just precautionary. So he should be coming back this month.
All right. Awesome. Hopefully that's all it is. You guys all right if we move on? I know really not much to talk about there, right? All right. So Ryan Fitzpatrick has a very glowing endorsement for Tua Tagovailoa. I got the quote right here. It's a little long. I'll get through it quick. So Ryan Fitzpatrick says, "I don't know how much time it'll be before Tua will be in the lineup. I know that I am the placeholder. We've already had that conversation. I've told him I'm going to do the best I can to lead this team and win football games when I'm out there. Whenever it is that Tua gets his chance, whether it's early or late or whenever, I'm going to be his biggest cheerleader. I'm going to go out there competing every single day as I know the younger guys are. You can even just tell the guys are going to gravitate to him. There's just something about him that is very likable, and I can already tell that he's going to be one of those guys that gets along with everybody, that guys are going to want to follow. He just has that kind of aura about him." How much better can you get from that? A dude so respected like Ryan Fitzpatrick, a great teammate, just goes and puts the stamp on what we've known all along about Tua. This dude is a leader, and guys are going to flock and rally behind this guy. I mean, you really can't say much better from a better source, right? Savak, but what else could you ask for?
Couldn't ask for anything better than that. And I do love that we got Fitz in there. Can you think of a better mentor to have in the building for a rookie quarterback? I don't think one exists, aside from maybe a Hall of Famer who's been there for his entire career. Because but aside from that natural leadership, one of the things that Fitzpatrick's able to impart on Tua is that ability to stick around. I mean, how many years has Fitz been in the league now? What's he on year 14, 15, something like
16.
that? Oh, wow. My point exactly. So I think it's invaluable to have him there, and I do love his remarks about Tua. It does give me a lot of hope for the future. So this is great.
Yeah, I mean, I think something you said, you could find that Hall of Famer. You could find a more, renowned, talented quarterback, but they don't all have the same personality and the same want to teach and the same. I mean, this is a Harvard dude, a smart dude, a nice, friendly dude by all accounts. Like, Brett Favre didn't want to help Rodgers out. Brett Favre was a more talented quarterback. So yeah, no, you really can't be in a better situation, I don't think. Brian, what do you think about this? You love this endorsement here. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, everything he said about Tua is exactly what I expect to people to say about Tua. It's what everyone's that's ever even looked at Tua has said about him. I think what Savak touched on is the real story here. I think this is 10 times better than having a Hall of Famer. This guy's going to just hand the job over probably 8 or 9 games into the season. He's going to do it graciously, and he doesn't have the crazy ego that a Brett Favre would have to try to stop that. He's going to do – I literally think that Fitzpatrick is trying to transition into coaching, and I don't think there could be a better situation on this planet for Tua. And the fact that Fitzpatrick has played in Shane Gailey's offense for 5 years and can just baby bird feed Tua this offense is just going to be amazing. I just think this is we couldn't have a better, like a more selfless guy, a more high character guy, a smart guy. Just perfect.
I was picturing that in my head. That's why
the baby birding. I do have to ask. I have to ask Lindsey. Is this how it was in Baltimore? Did Joe Flacco hand it over to Lamar like this graciously?
So the thing with Joe Flacco is that he got hurt, and that was how Lamar started, and everybody wants to make it a thing about how like Joe Flacco lost his job and all that. So it kind of happened differently. And then once the Ravens were on that win streak, it would have been stupid to go back and put Flacco back in there. So it happened differently, but I mean, Flacco was all for it. So
my favorite point that Brian and Savak, you guys brought up, my favorite point of all of this is, this is better than a Hall of Famer because, like Savak said, this dude has staying power. Like, this isn't a guy who played 15 years with one team and everyone knew his name and he didn't have to fight 4 years in, 5 years in, 8 years in. Fitzpatrick's had to fight for his job. He's never just come in and be like, this is my team. Like, yeah, let's go. Like, this dude's fought every single year. And it's not going to be easy every year. Someone has to teach you how to fight, how to stick around, how to hang. You're going to face adversity. Just because you're named the starter, that doesn't mean the work's over. The battle has literally just begun at that point. So, yeah, you couldn't hear better words coming from a better human being about our QB1. Anybody else got anything on that?
I do want to ask Lindsey one question. So
yeah, let's get it.
In Lamar's first season, when Baltimore made it into that playoff game, would you have been on board with them putting Flacco back in for that game?
I don't know. I'd like to say yes, just because I'm such like a Flacco person, and he's so good in the playoffs. Like, you can't get better than Flacco in the playoffs unless you're
exactly.
But I feel like if they wanted to instill confidence in Lamar, they did the right thing. I feel like it would have been kind of like, okay, you can play until you're good, but once you've been a bad boy, like, we're putting you in timeout kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, that just wouldn't have been productive at all. So
absolutely.
And while I hate that they lost, and while I hate that they might, I'm not going to say they could have won if Flacco was playing, but they might have. But what are you going to do when your quarterback comes in the next year and has zero confidence?
Right.
So.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been they might have had a better shot, but long term, it's not a great move to shatter your young up and coming QB's confidence there. So,
Right.
All right. We're going to get into something a little different here for the final, 5, 10, 15 minutes as we wrap it up here. It's something we don't really touch on. There's really no reason for us to touch on. We love talking football. We love talking Dolphins football. We appreciate you guys listening, but there's things in life that are bigger than football. There's a lot of things in life bigger than football, especially in the year 2020. So we're going to talk about substance abuse disorder here a little bit and addiction. If you guys don't mind, bear with us here. Hopefully this helps somebody. Hopefully someone hears it that needs to hear it. It's not something that we go out and we write on a shirt or hold up signs or, tell the whole world. But both Brian and I are in recovery from heroin addiction. Brian, how many years do you have clean now?
About 8.5 years.
8.5 years clean and sober. I just hit July 1st. I hit 4 years clean and sober. So it's a struggle that we know personally and that we have fought personally. And, it's impacted Lindsey's life as well. So we were hoping that, we don't need to get into too much. We're not going to dive into anything, too much. You know what I mean? We're not going to give you war stories and this is what happened here. This is what happened here. But hopefully a little bit of hope we can give people to keep them fighting. So Lindsey, if you don't mind, kind of just letting us know to whatever extent you want to, how this has impacted you personally, if you don't mind.
Sure. So a couple years ago, my younger brother died of a heroin overdose. It was very sudden, really unexpected. Like, he lived in my parents' house. Like, nobody had any idea at all. And it was just kind of like such a shock that it took me a while to come to terms with it and come to peace with it. And I'm not going to say that I'm okay with it, because I'm not, but I'm okay talking about it and like facing it and hopefully turning it into something positive. And I feel like that's kind of like what you guys are doing now, obviously, by still being here, but it's just, it affects a lot more people than you think. And you guys are an example of that. Like, I wouldn't think in a million years that you guys had been through that, but that's the thing. That's how it is. It doesn't matter how it starts. It doesn't matter how it finishes, but the point is that it can affect your next door neighbor. It can affect your friend at school. It can affect your best friend and you might not even know. It can affect the guy in your fantasy football league you don't know. And it's a really real thing. And I feel like, especially now, I mean, you hear stories about how everybody's quarantined, everybody's at home, and like this may be happening more often than normal. It's just something that happens a lot more often than people think. And I don't know, it's still hard for me to talk about. I don't like to talk about it just because it's hard to put into words how it affects you and how it affects your family. But it's also kind of therapeutic in a way, because it's not something that you ever think is going to happen to you. And I feel like in 2020, like, I didn't think this was going to happen to us. Like, this coronavirus thing, like, did we think this was going to happen? I thought it was going to be over in 2 weeks. And a lot of people, just don't think they're going to get it, and they're going out and going to parties and doing all this stuff. And it's like the people who are taking it seriously are kind of at a feeling of, am I doing something wrong, even though you're not? And I feel like, if anything, if you're dealing with like addiction, substance abuse, anything, talk to somebody. Like, that's all you can do. Nobody's going to judge you. And if you think somebody's going to judge you, then you need to talk to another person. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in my family in general, like my mom, my dad, and myself all feel like we all would have done something if we had known, and we hadn't known. And we just kind of wish that he would have said something or done something differently. Like, we would have been mad at him, sure, but at least maybe he would still be here, kind of a thing. So that's just kind of, I don't feel guilty, but I feel like I miss what like could have been. Like we were never
Yeah.
close as children or anything like that. We always fought with each other. We didn't have a lot of the same interests or anything like that. But like as we grew up to be adults, we kind of were developing a more like adult relationship. Like I would invite him to my house in college to like watch football together, and he would never come, but you know, he would think about it. So like that kind of like I kind of miss what could have been. And like if you don't want to miss what could have been, then try to do something now. Is kind of sorry if I like rambled a little bit.
No, talk as long
Yeah.
as you want. Yeah,
I mean,
you definitely weren't rambling.
Yeah, but that's just pretty much it. Like if you're not sure about the future, because nobody knows what's going to happen, and I struggle with that too. I'm such a planning person. Like I have to know what's going to happen. I have a planner. I write everything down. If I don't write it down, it doesn't happen. But if you want to change something about your future life, you have to do something now.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something earlier about, I think you were talking about, you said therapeutic. I think you were talking about when discussing it as therapeutic. I think, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and we mentioned perspective earlier in the podcast, and now it's so it's changed your perspective now. Now you know this is a real thing. Now you know what to look out for. Now maybe if you see someone struggling, it clicks into your mind instead of possibly maybe you were judging a few years ago. Now you have a different perspective. Not saying you do, but I was a junkie. And because I had a car and drove from the suburbs into bad neighborhoods, I would see junkies passed out on the corner, and I would be like, oh man, look at these junkies, drug addicts. Like I'm nothing like them. I was just like them, because I eventually literally became just like them when I started losing things one after another. So that was my whole thing on the perspective, is I would never change a thing in my past because it made me who I am today. It kind of opened up my eyes to the world. It made me more understanding to other people's problems and more understanding to other people's feelings and emotions. And again, I won't go on a whole long spiel. I know Brian's a better speaker with all this stuff than I am, so I'll give him a little more time to speak. But I did want to just a couple things that Lindsey mentioned. It doesn't discriminate. So it could be anybody. It could be your son, your daughter. It could be your grandmother, anybody. It could be Oxycontins. It could be Percocets. And that's how it starts. It could be anywhere. Does it race, age, sex? It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate. If you're concerned about somebody, reach out and talk to them, ask. And Lindsey mentioned just talk to somebody, and you were like, hey, if your brother would have came to you or your parents, you would have been a little mad. And that's exactly right. But it's hard. It's hard to talk to family. You're worried about the judgment. You think you can handle it on your own. If you don't have family that you're comfortable talking to about it, if you're worried about how it's going to go, we have a hotline number for you that we'll give out right at the end of the show. Go talk to a stranger. Walk into a detox facility, a hospital, a rehab center. Go in and tell them what you're dealing with, and they will set you up with what you need. You're not fighting it by yourself. You're not alone. There's a pandemic going on right now. Well, this is the epidemic that's been going on way before this pandemic. This issue is killing multiple times more people than this pandemic will, hopefully. I mean, as in hopefully the pandemic doesn't get to that level. But yeah, there's always hope. Don't give up. And yeah, you gotta make that first step to try to change it. Brian, what do you got?
Yeah, so I can't even explain to you how this came up between Lindsey and I, that her brother suffered this fate. It's disgusting, but it had a purpose. And, it was never my intention to ever speak about this on a Miami Dolphins podcast. But then when I met Lindsey, it became just absolute necessity that this does come up. And the reason that it absolute necessity is Lindsey touched on it, is the stigma, right? The stigma of so when I was a heroin addict, I mean, I'm always going to be a heroin addict, but when I was actively using heroin, I wanted to stop so bad. So bad. I couldn't imagine stopping. I couldn't imagine telling anyone that I was shooting heroin. Every day it was just a low that I wasn't even comfortable with. And I just couldn't imagine. I would sit up at night and I would Google how do heroin addicts stop doing heroin. And there wasn't a lot of answers, but the other thing about it too, in our society, is not only is the person suffering with the addiction have the stigma and they don't want to tell the people and they don't want to go out and tell anyone, but the family also has a stigma. Nobody wants to admit my brother's a heroin addict. And, Lindsey, thank you so much for doing that today. The impact it can have on somebody that's either side of it is just astronomical. But nobody wants to admit that. No one wants to admit their son's a heroin addict. I'm here today sober with a really successful life because my family didn't get over on that stigma. They decided I'm going to admit it because I can't have a dead son. And thank God they did, but I meet people daily whose family won't admit it. I meet people daily I literally buried a kid 3 years ago whose parents would not admit publicly. They were scared about sending him to rehab because of how that insurance would look. So, if somebody that's suffering, if it's affecting your life, what I have found on the other side of it was everyone knew. Nobody knew I was shooting heroin, but everybody knew there was a grave problem. I wasn't really hiding it. But what I found too is, when my family and I admitted it, the healing began, help came, and, I feel so sorry to be on that side of Lindsey's. It's got to be very hard to heal because there's so many what ifs. But because my family, they brought it out, I brought it out. My family has also gotten to heal. And I thought that I was the one suffering from this affliction and alone, but this was eating them. Like my sister was having anxiety attacks. My mom, literally her cholesterol and her blood pressure were through the roof. And as soon as I started getting help, she started recovering. She started healing. My whole family got to heal, but it all starts with just admitting it. It all starts with just going out there and saying, I have a problem, ask for help, if it's obviously affecting your family, just asking them like, hey, is there a problem? I'm not going to judge you. Coming from a place of love and not of anger makes an entire difference. And Jimmy said we have a hotline. We're definitely going to give the hotline, but we're going to do more than that. Like Jimmy and I are both on Twitter. If you're struggling with this on either end of it, family, or you're the one that is, if it's heroin, great. If it's alcohol, great. Whatever you can't get over, Jimmy and I are closely plugged into this community. I literally have people, contacts all over the country. So if you're struggling with this and you don't know what the next step is and you don't feel like calling a hotline, DM me on Twitter. It's Brian Burnsy, it's Jimmy Kearns 14. DM either one of us. Email us info@finaddictsnetwork.com.
Day or night, anytime.
Yep. So, the only, I don't know. No one's embarrassed that I was a heroin addict anymore. The family, I work for the same guy who employed me back then, and the trust in the pride they have in me for what we've overcome together is just insane. And it's not because I'm smart and it's not because I'm good looking, because obviously you can see that's not true. It's just because I admitted it, and people were willing to help me, and I took that help, and that's it's there for anyone. I was a very poor person when I got help, so like money doesn't have to be the thing that stands in your way either. So if you need help, just ask.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. It's a difficult thing to do, and I'm not even joking with this or making light of it like I normally do with everything. This is one of the few things I won't. Everyone loves an underdog story. Everyone loves a comeback story. Trust me, I can't even express the amount of love I got when I started this journey. There's a community up here. It's a gym for individuals in substance abuse recovery. They can go for free as long as they're 48 hours sober without a drink or drug. It's called Recovery Fitness. And I did a video for them that got like almost 10,000 views. And people I didn't even know were messaging me, congratulating me and wishing me well. And people were reaching out, asking questions, needing help. And yeah, it's a tough first step to take, but it does get easier. I used to hate those corny sayings of one step at a time, one day at a time, it gets better. But then when you kind of get to the end of it, you look back, not the end, but when you get further along, you look back, that's exactly what it was. And Brian, I know you'll agree with this, man. Like anybody out there who maybe they're just ready to get off of it, they're ready to make that change, they're ready, literally go a minute without getting high. That's what I had to do. I would go 1 minute without getting high. Then I went 1 hour without getting high. Then, all right, I'm not going to get high today. And then a week. And then, you know what, right, Brian? Like you got to take it little by little by little. And then boom, you turn around and you haven't gotten high in a year. So yeah, please, you can reach out. Like Brian said, you can DM me. I don't like to brag. I'm a certified peer specialist also, but I won't hit you with any of that mumbo jumbo. I'll just talk to you like the human being that you are. I love talking to people, especially about this topic. Lindsey, thank you very much for opening up about that. I can't even imagine what you had to feel for that, or what you felt going through that. And I know there's probably some guilt at the end that you deal with and regret and remorse. And the only thing that I can say to you, just from my perspective of it, is, and I know I can hear from what you're saying that you do this now, but I just wanted to reiterate for anybody listening that now just pay it forward. Like by telling your brother's story, you're helping somebody else. So yeah, I appreciate you opening up with us. I appreciate it a ton. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys for sharing your stories too. That's incredible.
Yeah, Jimmy loves talking about some Jimmy. So that hotline, I apologize. I don't know. I could not find for the life of me what the acronym stands for, but it's the national hotline. It's the SAMHSA hotline. It's for substance abuse issues. That phone number is 1-800-662-4357, 1-800-662-4357. I've used the National Suicide Hotline one night when I was in a bad way, and the woman saved my life. I got her name, and I sent her an edible arrangement about like 6 months after that. The woman saved my life one night. So these hotlines work for sure. So again, if you're struggling, you got that phone number, you can reach out to Brian or I. One of the things I heard a lot was from parents, mothers, fathers, uncles with questions, as in like, oh, I think my son or daughter is up to something, having an issue with this, even stuff like that. If you want to reach out and be like, hey, I think my daughter is struggling with addiction, or she's up to something. If you want to ask me questions about that, anything, if you got something, ask it. It can't hurt. And I know Brian is the same way for him. So yeah.
Thanks again, Lindsey. Thank you for sharing your story and shedding some light on this.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. And definitely thank you for that. And I'm very sorry for your loss too, as well.
Oh, thank you.
So
Lindsey, before we leave, I got one quick question. So we always end the show with a fins up because that's how the Dolphins go out. How does a Ravens fan sign off? Not that we'll let you do it, but how? Do they flock out? What do they do?
I can't do the pit.
That's what I figured.
Flipping pigeons.
I don't know.
Never really come up before, so
yeah, I don't know.
We're not used
on
to
that
signing
note,
out
fins
in the
up.
playoffs, so yeah.
Oh, they're too busy winning
that?
playoff games. Too busy winning divisions to have any stuff like that.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, Lindsey, for joining us. Hope maybe we can get you on later in the year. Touch base on the season and what's going on. It was great having you. Savak, Brian, always good seeing you. And everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Stay safe. Fins up, baby.
Fins up.
She did it.
She did it.